真面目な OL メイトお悩みなんておさらばさ。祝ジャガー、祝テスカトリポカ。配慮するは我にあり。許しましょう。捧げ物、貢ぎ物、生贄その他。
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here with a guide for Tezcatlipoca. He's a limited 5-star assassin introduced in Lost Belt 7, and he's a prime example of the massive power creep we're currently experiencing. AoE assassins have been a motley crew featuring garbage kits, atrocious hit counts, preemptive insta-kill, and missing frames from animation. Poor Ushi. Kichi Hogan and Summer Valkyrie were serviceable, but Tezcat represents an extreme shift in the other direction. This guy's like the bionic man of assassins. They threw everything in here. So let's get to know the new boss. Starting things off, we have Charisma of Conflict. This is a party attack buff that doubles up on allies with Guts. Guts isn't the most convenient buff to shove onto your whole party. If you want to go that route, Asclepius can lend a hand. Looking for you, Tezcat has Tepialotl, a self-guts, arts, anti-divine, and anti-super large combo. The anti-buffs are 50% of pop and separate effects, which is reasonable to good for skill-based anti-buffs. As far as divine targets go, they're fairly common, and include many riders and a few berserkers. Super large, though, is mostly relevant to mid-boss enemies. There are a handful of servants to get double whammied. Summer BB and BB Dubai are the big ones, but you can also threaten King Protea and Tiamat if you want to take your chances against alter egos. There is one catch with Tepialotl, which is that it nullifies sunlight terrain for 3 turns. Thankfully, only a small number of servants rely on sunlight to begin with, mostly related to Gawain, and these aren't really ones you'd use with Tezcat to begin with. His middle skill has a potentially more troublesome debuff. This is Black Sun, and it's a 50% battery for Tezcat that splashes 30% for the rest of your frontline at level 10. Another benefit to your party is a 2-hit invuln, but here's the rub. It applies a one-time, 3-turn invuln block. Now to get around this, I'd recommend running a copy of White Vessel's Command Seal as an emergency cleanse, but odds are your very team composition is going to counteract this supposed weakness. Castoria's Noble Phantasm not only cleanses this debuff, but it also applies anti-enforcement defense, which isn't affected by the invuln block. And Jufu, for her part, has an actual on-demand cleanse. Just remember to use it after Tezcat fires off his skills. Sequencing is pretty important in general for Tez, so remember to go with his skill 3 and then skill 1. Then you can decide whether you pop his skill 2 and chase it with removal if it's available. You might be gobsmacked by the girth of this battery, but hold that thought for a minute. Let's fill out the picture with a look at Tezcat's Noble Phantasm first. That would be First Son Xibalba. This is an AoE arts attack with preemptive invuln pierce, 10% party charge, and an overcharge effect for 3 turns of personal NP damage. Let's talk about that ramping effect first. Even by default, Tezcat's neutral damage is comparable to Space Ishtar's, so having that ramp over multiple turns lets you brute force trivial content if you're feeling lazy. Just gotta keep an eye out for casters is all. Our last ingredient is a very strange one. Tezcat has a passive called Tezcatlipoca, Chief of Warriors. This increases the effectiveness of Mystic Code skills by 10%. Now unfortunately, this is multiplicative and not additive, so a 10% charge skill doesn't give 20. It gives 10 times 1.1, which is 11. A multiplicative effect like this is more impactful for offensive buffs, but it still has a meaningful impact on your charge management. Sometimes arts looping really does come down to a matter of 1 or 2%, and in those oddball situations, having your finger on the scale can save you some heartache down the road. You can double down on this by using the Summer Street Mystic Code, which has 2 separate 10% batteries. That one's due to come out this summer, so keep an eye out. With all this laid out, we can formulate a strategy. Tezcat is an amazing 90++ component because he's spamming out so much charge and damage. 30% for your teammates on demand and an additional 10% just for using his NP? That's a damn good deal, and if you wanted to be a meme lord, you can even run 2 of them on the same team. With their full skill loadouts, that's 80% charge for each of them, with both of them getting the double buff for 80% attack as well. And whenever one NPs, the other gets that little extra charge to keep their momentum going. It's a funny strategy, soured only by the fact that if you enter the Assassin tab, you're gonna see a mountain of Koyanskayas and not much else. In practice, you'll be running him with a single target attacker of your choosing, then a Castoria in front and an Oberon in the back. That'll be your bread and butter unless your charge requirements demand something much more extreme, but that's a case-by-case kind of deal. Another effect of Tezcat's abundant charge is that he can run aggressive CEs with impunity. So Black Grail? On the menu. Chargeless event CEs? Same deal. This combination of flexibility and damage is what makes Tezcat a power pick. By the way, he's got multiplicative buffs. Did I mention that? Honestly, Tezcatlipoca is so good, and his downside so easy to circumvent, that there's not a whole lot to talk about. He currently does the third most neutral damage of the AoE assassins, and he's pretty much the most practical of those three. Shuten Doji is kneecapped with a single-hit Noble Phantasm, and Kashin Koji, well, we'll get to her later this year. But yeah, you've got damage, party charge up the ass, and a pair of handy anti-buffs to push your damage even further. In a vacuum, would highly recommend. But of all years, this isn't one where you can judge a servant in a vacuum. So here's the 2 billion QP question. Do you go hard for Tezcatlipoca? My recommended strategy is this. If you already rolled hard for Summer Ibuki last year, I'd save my quartz for one of the extremely high-powered, single-target generalists that are coming in a few months. Summer Castoria, for instance, is a brutal powerhouse and a prime target for overgrailing. Speaking of which, Tezcat kinda suffers from being an assassin on that front, because assassins have a 10% base damage penalty just by the misfortune of their class. Berserkers, on the other hand, have a 10% stat bonus. I know there's at least one guy out there that's gonna get irrationally mad I even made the comparison, but it does matter. That's because FGO, once you have the fundamental supports, has reached the point where it's a bit of a choose-your-own-adventure when it comes to account building. If you go and max out a high-end attacker like Summer Ibuki, 120 NP5 and all that, doing so takes a lot of pressure off your single-target complements. Not just that, but it also reduces the need to have developed specialist AoEs in every class. You still want some, especially because foreigner bosses are still a thing, but the point is that superpowered generalists give you wiggle room to run less optimal complements. They shift some of that burden onto a familiar element. Now Ibuki is ideal for that purpose, but lucky for you, Tezcat is still really high up there. If he's where you want to make your stand, you absolutely can. Mind you, you're gonna run into casters way more than foreigners, but you've seen his kitten statistics. He's pretty fucking good. But if you want to make Ash the Savior your main generalist, you'll probably have to choose between the two. Because an NP4 Tezcat or an NP4 Ash is gonna do a lot more for you strategically than having NP2 of both. Or maybe you consider anti-foreigner tech to be a priority, in which case, a full-power Kukulkan lets you get away with a lot of bullshit. I can say that this or that servant does something a little rarer or their kit is broken in this or that direction, but within that top tier, your strategic situation is going to matter a lot more. Mind you, the distinction between top tier and not top tier does still matter, so don't go thinking you'll get the same mileage out of Avenger Nita or Pope Johanna. My point is this. Unless you're a filthy fucking whale like me, you'll need to categorize and prioritize because this year is overflowing with power picks. If you like a powerful generalist AoE, Tezcat good. If you already have a filled out Ibuki, then you're rolling for his specialist strengths and potentially giving up alternative sources of power for that incremental advantage. If you like a blowout single target attacker, might be worth hoarding your quartz for them instead. Good luck. Thanks for watching, lads. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come on to twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every weekend, 3 PM Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. This week I've got Persona 5 Royal on Friday and a double dose of FGO on Saturday and Sunday. Reading Lost Belt 7 and gobbling that cob. Wait, let me try that again.